What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with another video, and today we've got the box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the release of Matrix Resurrections, which was awful. It also saw the release of Sing 2, a sequel that, once again, people question as to why it was ever made in the first place. We also had West Side Story continue to lose money, and The Kingsman, a brand new film, not really making all that much money either. The big news of today, though, is Spider-Man No Way Home has passed pretty easily at this point, within, again, a week of its release, in its second weekend of release, $1 billion worldwide, meaning that this film is on track to, at minimum, make around $1.5 billion, and actually very much has a shot at $2 billion. But hey, don't forget, there's a pandemic going on. Pandemic, excuse after excuse after excuse. And yet this film is now guaranteed at the bare minimum to have made more than all of the MCU films that came out in 2021. And also could single-handedly, by itself, because of the 25% cut that Disney gets from this film, actually end up making the MCU profitable for the year. Now, that's not taking into account the other Disney releases that were massive bombs this year, but as far as MCU or MCU-related titles, that is still pretty impressive of this film. Not so much Disney and the MCU. But before going any further, please, though, make sure you smash that like button. It really does help us out a lot. And also make sure that you're subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So as you can see, the shills in the media are continuing to try and spin the pandemic narrative, saying that this is the film that has a joyous holiday, is now officially the first movie of the pandemic era, and therefore also the only film of the pandemic era to reach $1 billion. Worldwide gross through Sunday is $1.05 billion, which makes this installment Sony's number 2 film of all time, behind only Spider-Man Far From Home, which it'll easily pass up, meaning this is going to be Sony's biggest release ever. But what about the pandemic? Remember, West Side Story was a failure because of the pandemic, right? Does anyone else remember when that excuse was being used? Because I totally remember when that was being used as an excuse. Not to mention, all of this is being done to the tune of not having the communists in China helping out. It says it's one of the only films of the modern era to be able to reach this amount of money without China. One of the only other films that I'm aware of, at the very least, was Joker, which barely crossed $1 billion, but also did so without China. So this film getting to $1.52 billion, and that's, again, not including China in the mix. That would be quite impressive. So again, Sony, as the sole distributor of this movie, please do not make a deal with the devil, and do not work out a deal with them. You don't need it. You're making massive profits from this film. All your other films added together this year already make you the most profitable studio of 2021. If you want to see more on that, check out my video breaking that down on OMB Reviews. And all I can say is that there's no need for it. You're going to be making massive profits off of this film. You have the potential to make upwards of $1 billion in net gain, net profits from this one film alone. There's no need to work with the communist. I know that's kind of Disney's go-to, but let's not you have and go down that road either. What I find most impressive about all of this, of course, is that No Way Home is right now tracking ahead of Far From Home by 51%, and tracking ahead of 99%, tracking ahead of Homecoming 99% for the same group of markets at the current exchange rate. So this film is not only going to be able to pass up Far From Home, it's going to be able to pass up so many other films, and is going to be able to be, again, a massive release. It's already made over almost $70 million in the UK, a little over $50 million in Mexico, $40 million in Korea. And what is interesting, too, is that Japan, of which this film gets a release in January, as it says there, on January 7th, could very much be a huge moneymaker for this movie, and I think that Japan is going to be the deciding factor as to whether or not this film is able to reach the $2 billion mark. There's no doubt about it that it's going to reach 1.5 at least, because everything would have to basically fall apart from this point on in all countries and all markets, which just does not seem to be happening. And if Japan is as big as some expect it to be, since Japan is very much a popular area for the IP of Spider-Man, you could see this country push the film over the edge into the $2 billion era. So going into the numbers, as you can see, we got around a 70% drop for Spider-Man No Way Home in its second week of release, which is pretty standard for most films coming out. As far as most big budget films coming out. What is also interesting about all of this is, of course, the fact that it has been making a series of films, or rather it's been making money throughout the entirety of the week because of the holiday season. And so the fact that its weekend gross right now is only 70% of a drop after having a lot of people going to see this during their holidays off, that is still a very impressive number, to say the very least. Sing 2 opened up to $23.7 million, having a total of $39.4 million for its domestic. Matrix Resurrections made $12 million over the weekend, and adding that onto what it's made since its earlier release, it puts the total domestic for the film at 22.5. And yes, you see that correctly. Sing 2 had a better opening weekend than Matrix Resurrections, and in fact, in total domestic gross, is outpacing and almost doubling that of Matrix Resurrections. So if you didn't believe the reviews of Jeremy and me and others on this and on all our respective channels, then the money should very much be speaking for that. And I know everyone's excuse is going to be, yeah, but HBO Max, and yet there are films that were released on HBO Max day and date release this year that were able to either make their money back or get darn close to making their money back. And I don't know what the excuse is going to be for Matrix Resurrections, which they are still not releasing an official production budget for. And you kind of make you wonder, scratch your head a little bit, why are they hiding that number? Is it a little bit higher than maybe they maybe that we expected it to be? Otherwise, it's just not a very good look. The Kingsman made $6.3 million. And again, this is a franchise where the first film was good, second film not so good. And then this film looked like it had a lot of promise, but no one's going to see it. West Side Story. Remember Spielberg blaming the pandemic? Well, yeah, no one's going to see it still. So, hey, there's still that going for you. But as far as pandemic is concerned, hey, Spider-Man No Way Home would disagree. And fair showing from Sing 2 seems to also disagree with that narrative as well. As far as totals are concerned, as of right now, Spider-Man No Way Home has again crossed the $1 billion mark, making $1,054 million, which is just absolutely insane right now. It has made 5.3 times its production budget, so more than enough for it to not just break even, but also to make massive profits. Sing 2, right now worldwide, has made $64.2 million, so again, a pretty strong opening for this film, though I don't really know exactly how much legs this film's going to have. But with a lower production budget, at least a sub $100 million production budget, breaking even's in the cards at the very least. We'll see what the numbers are as of next weekend. With Matrix Resurrections, it is doing a little bit better than Sing 2 worldwide, only because it's doing a little bit better in the international box office. But this attempt to try and retcon the Red Pill, to try to retcon the entire series into something that it never was, is clearly not really doing well with the fans. And again, you could try and blame HBO Max all you want, but when you think about a Matrix film, you think, oh, that's a film typically that you say, I want to see in a theater. People aren't going out to see this in droves in theaters, and we don't really have any HBO Max numbers to look at to really be able to offset any of those costs. Kingsman, $10 million in its release domestically, so still no international numbers for this film as of yet, but as of right now, we can at the very least say domestically it is just not really doing all that much. Looking ahead as far as what this means for Spider-Man going forward, now that we have the Week 2 numbers, as you know, Week 2 numbers is what I base my own projections on. Based on that, right, so assuming that these first 2 weeks is 70% of the entirety of its eventual total, if it is 70% of the eventual total, that would mean that it would make around $1.5 billion by the end of its run. If, however, it's able to double, right? If this is only 50% of what it's made, and again, if it does really well in Japan, it very well could only be half of what it's made so far. We'll, of course, be following that very closely here in Geeks and Gamers and over on my channel, OMB Reviews. But you see, there is the potential for this film to reach $2.1 billion by the end of its run, with the average being around 1.8. Either way, this film is going to be coming in likely well over 1.5 billion, and this, again, without communist China. As far as the net gain and profits of the film, this film right now has already made a fair amount of money in net gain, but the entirety of it, it's going to at least make $603 million in net gain. Could make almost $1 billion as far as net gain is concerned, depending on how well it does in our various other locations. But as you can see, as of now, it has made $332 million in net gain profit. So again, it's made its money back based on marketing, based on production budget, and it is doing incredibly well. Matrix Resurrections with this release right now is looking at $183 million loss, but I will say, for this movie, since they have not given us a production budget, all we can do is base this off of previous releases in the Matrix saga, and again, that's around $150 million for those budgets, and so, assuming that's the budget, it could be more, it could be less. They have to release that for us to actually know. The film's looking right now to be another massive financial failure for HBO Max and for Warner Brothers as a studio. Kingsman as a 20th Century Studios release. Again, they don't give us an official budget, but compared to the other films in the franchise, $100 million seems a likely scenario, maybe $80 to $100 million. So this film's break-even point is $250 million. Worldwide at only $10 million. It means right now it is around $143.9 million in the red. Sing 2 costs a lot less, and so at $64 million right now, it's looking at a net loss of $88 million, but this will change as it continues to release. It looks like, at the very least, this is the one film that families are deciding to go see. Other films like West Side Story still $128 million in the red, not looking like it's going to make that up in any way. Welcome to Raccoon City, also in the red. House of Gucci, also currently still in the red. And Encanto, though it does seem like it has done a little bit better than what was previously expected, still $64 million in the red. Disney having a pretty lackluster year thus far. Bringing you to my Spider-Man comparison, No Way Home versus the entirety of the MCU. Right now, it's made almost $1.1 billion worldwide. The entirety of the MCU this year, when you add all 3 MCU titles, Disney MCU specific titles this year, and their worldwide totals, it adds up to be around $1.2 billion. Seeing that this film is expected to make around at least $1.5 to $2 billion, you'll see this film is not just going to beat the entirety of the MCU added together, but is going to decimate that. Not just to mention that, but when you look at the net loss for the MCU, $100 million versus the net gain for Spider-Man No Way Home is $332 million. But what I find interesting is the split between Sony and Marvel, because this big number, $100 million, has been now cut down to around $15 million, and that is, again, thanks to the massive amount of money that is being brought in worldwide by Spider-Man No Way Home. So Sony out of this number, so again, their net gain, so remembering that they take 60% of the actual profits when everything is said and done, or rather 60% of the box office when everything is said and done, and remembering that the Disney and Sony split is 75-25. 75% of the $332 million made so far is $250 million, whereas the 25% is $83 million, which brings down the MCU loss, at least for them this year. But as I said, there are plenty of other films that had $100+ million losses, looking especially at films like Jungle Cruise, which are not going to likely be made up. What's also pretty amazing is that 2 films from Sony, Venom 2 and Spider-Man No Way Home, have made theaters make $621 million across the world, whereas Disney has only been able to provide $484 million, and that's including 3 films plus 25% of what it is getting from Spider-Man No Way Home, and rather 25% of what it put into Spider-Man No Way Home. So Sony is clearly the best helper of all theater chains across the world right now, and so Spider-Man No Way Home being the biggest part of all of that. But just to see this comparison to the MCU, it's a no-brainer here. MCU failed. The MCU experiment failed, right? Remember even, was it Bob Chapek or Bob Iger came out to say, oh yeah, Shang-Chi, it's kind of an experiment. Well, hey, the experiment paid off, at least for that individual film. As far as the entirety of the MCU, not so much. Doing our continued comparison between this film and pre-pandemic and pandemic era films, we'll go ahead and compare this now to Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. Right now, Infinity War is gaining some ground against this movie, whereas this film was beating it in its first Wednesday and first Thursday. As you can see, the Friday and Saturday numbers jump up a bit, remembering, of course, that this is Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, so this was kind of to be expected. I imagine that we'll see these numbers kind of continue to play out in various ways. I expect that the second Monday number, will probably end up beating both of these films. What is impressive, though, is that where we've seen some gains being made here for Infinity War, $455 million at this same point in the release versus $467 million of No Way Home means No Way Home currently still tracking ahead of Infinity War, which is darn impressive. Not to mention, it is well over the entirety of where all three MCU films come out this year were in their runs respectively. So this film is a massive juggernaut. This film, again, not just crossed $1 billion, but because it's only been out for 2 weeks now, is expected to, in my projections, to make anywhere from $1.5 billion to $2 billion, and or somewhere in between that. And obviously, this film could do even better or worse. But what are your thoughts? Are you surprised Spider-Man's broken $1 billion? There were some people saying it would never happen. But hey, the $1 billion mark was likely crossed sometime yesterday, and I said it likely was going to make it by Christmas. We just now have, of course, the official numbers being put out, or the estimates being put out. The actual numbers themselves could end up being a little bit higher than what they are right now. Either way, this film is still going to be projected to make massive more amount of money, and it's pretty impressive. So let me know your thoughts about this. Spider-Man No Way Home being the massive box office hit, and Resurrections. Are you surprised that this movie is epically failing? It's really not when you read some of the reviews, and obviously watch the reviews on my channel, on Geeks and Gamers channel as well, that Jeremy did a great job breaking things down, by the way. Jeremy did, because it is, I think, incredibly... should be very incredibly troubling, because remember, even within the film itself, they kind of play on how they're trying to reboot the series into another trilogy. I don't see how they can justify that with the numbers that it's putting out right now, at least based off of the estimated budget for the film. Well, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like this video, smash that like button. Go check out my channel, OMB Reviews, again, for a fuller breakdown. And also go to my website, ombreviews.com, to be able to keep up with the battle between Spider-Man and the entirety of the MCU, and also to keep track of box office stuff. I try and update those numbers as often as I can. Also, go check out geeksandgamers.com, where you can get some merch, and also, again, awesome articles, tons of stuff. Obviously, the Geeks and Gamers Premium membership as well gets you access to exclusive streams and exclusive Discord rights and privileges, and it's just awesome. So again, check out my site, ombreviews.com, and geeksandgamers.com. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.